But he's not talking about that. The relationship is a trusted, known relationship that has the rights, and the way they have the rights to speak to you in this way is that you gave it to them. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I am Pastor Matt. I am a pastor, author, and leader of a coaching program for men called New 90. And I've got a special guest for you today, special to me and for you, because I got my brother here, Mark, on the podcast today. And he's here on the show, agreed to do this after several months of arm twisting and negotiating. And I Venmoed him a little bit of money. But he finally decided to jump on here with me. And he is a pastor in New Zealand. I'm not going to give away too much about him. I'm going to let him introduce himself here in just a second. But he is literally living on the other side of the world. Today, when we're recording this, is a Thursday. It's a Friday for him. So lucky for you, we're talking to somebody tomorrow. So you'll get to know what's coming up on Friday tomorrow. Dad joke. So, but anyway, I want to welcome to the show my brother, Pastor Mark Poole. What's up, Mark?
What's up, man? Thanks for the introduction. I was waiting for one of those applause cues, to kind of the background.
Yeah, we'll put that in post.
Post that. That's good, man. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to the conversation, and just the fact that you said special and associated with me, my heart is just full this morning. And so yes, we are coming from Kiwi land, New Zealand. So we're always in the future, always one step ahead. So it's good to be here, man. Looking forward to the podcast and the chat.
Yeah, we just so y'all know, we don't have a script at all. We hey, maybe we'll address these couple of things. We're just going to see how the conversation goes. So nothing scripted here. We're just going to kind of go off the cuff and see where the conversation's going to lead us. So it'll be a lot of fun. So I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona. Both of us were raised in Florida, the capital of all the the red states and conservatism at the moment, right over here in the United States. Everyone's trying to get to Florida and then dodge all the alligators and the snakes that are in the Everglades down there. But we were born and raised in Florida. And so I left to come to Phoenix for a ministry school. Mark graduated and kind of made his own way through that kind of a similar program as well. And then both of us kind of felt like God kind of drew us right into ministry, into church-based ministry. And so he had a lot of travels throughout the United States. And then he made the decision to do me dirty and leave me here by myself.
By yourself.
By myself. Take his lovely wife and my beautiful nieces out to New Zealand. So all jokes aside, it's been super effective for you there because you became a pastor there, really went there not really knowing that was what it was going to lead to. But talk to us about how a Southern Florida boy redneck winds up in Kiwi land, as you called it, on the other side of the planet in New Zealand.
Yeah. What's amazing is you grow up in Florida and you don't realize how the rest of the country views Florida. And you have no idea. You have no idea that it is as redneck as can be until you actually leave and come back. I went back to visit just in 2019, and I recognized the Southern draws and the accents a little bit more. And you just kind of step back when you step out of an environment and then come back. You're like, wow, this is really, really how we grew up. Not that it's wrong. I mean, I love sunny sliced barbecue on Texas toast and sweet tea. Hallelujah. Oh, I just felt something there.
Hey, let me ask you a question real quick. Did you know about the Florida man thing?
The Florida man?
That? Yeah, everyone has this running joke about if you Google Florida man and any date, it comes up with this weird story about this man about some man randomly in Florida who attacked an alligator or something. Did you know about this?
Dude, I've never heard that. But now, hold on, I'm gonna make my to-do list right now. Google Florida man.
Florida man and a date. It's hilarious. I didn't know that was a thing. So we're from Florida and didn't know it. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. And so let's see, the process to get to New Zealand began when I married a girl from New Zealand.
Nice.
So yeah. So Dee's family, long story short, felt that they were supposed to move to the States, and they somehow landed in Arizona, and that's part of that connection. When I left Florida, moved to Arizona, and it was around that same window of time where my wife's family had moved to Arizona from New Zealand. And so when we got married, there was always this little part in the back of our head that was like, would we ever end up in New Zealand? So it was something that we were always open to. And in 2009, end of 2008, beginning of 2009, we tried to give it a go. We didn't know anything, immigration, nothing. We just sold everything and went. And it turns out there needs to be a little bit more of a thought process when you're going to
Right,
make
a
an
little plan.
just in our immaturity, we didn't really know. We found ourselves back in the States. And then we decided, that was just going to be too easy for us. Why don't we go ahead and have children? And when they're 3 and 1, let's then make an international move. And so we were living in Phoenix at the time, and we just felt that there's just something that's on the horizon. And we started to feel a little bit displaced. And so my wife and I just began to talk, hey, we tried this New Zealand thing before. Maybe it's something that we revisit. Let's begin, taking steps towards it. And then it was just like dominoes just began to fall, and all the things just started to line up. And when we took that first step, it was easy to take the second and the third, and just it would take a full week's worth of podcast to talk about how all the things lined up. But in the end, we found ourselves here in New Zealand. We had 3 boxes that were shipped freight. We stayed with one of Dee's family members, and 4 of us were in a single bedroom. And I remember in the first 24 hours, we got into Dee's Nana's house, and I looked at her and I said, we have just enough money to get back home. What do you want to do? Our stuff is already packed. And we kind of thought about it, and we said, no, let's just stay. Let's see how this goes. And that's been 8 years ago, last month. So it's been 8 years living as an expat here in New Zealand. So that's a little bit of the journey of how we got here.
Nice. And so you went there with, just on, faith, really, because I remember having the conversation with you saying, what are you going to do over there? And there was not really an answer. And you're like, I'm going to look for work. I've been, again, we won't dive too deep into this, but you applied at 100, literally more than 100 ministry positions here in the United States, all over the country. None of those seem to kind of, pan out. And so obviously it was, pool guys are a little bit hard-headed, but obviously it was a closed door after about 100 and some applications. It didn't work out for ministry. And you just went. So it was really just, you packed up on faith, literally, and sold everything and moved to the other side of the planet, to where all you knew was, a handful of immediate family members and stuff like that. So you get there, and what do you do? Like, you're a husband, a father, you are a leader of a family. You know what I mean? Like, you got all those things, you got all those roles that are in you. And now what do you do? What's the process? Day one is, I got enough money to go back home. That's number one. But okay, so now day 2, I got to start. We're not going back home. I got to start forging ahead. What's that like?
Yeah. Well, let me go back. You know that there are those people where the stars align, everything is perfect, everything is planned and mapped out, and that's just how they live their life. I hate those people, because that is not how things work with me. I tell people I got my education in the school of hard knocks. A lot of difficult things, a lot of learning experience that helped shape that. And when we were making the transition internationally, it wasn't this glorious thing. There was a part of me that felt saddened and grieved, not knowing what to do. And just through prayer and talking with my wife, hey, maybe this is something that we revisit. And when you're in that moment, you don't know that steps 1 and 2 and 6 and 7 are going to work. You just go ahead and move forward. So it was more out of a place of restlessness and going, hey, what is it that we're doing with our lives? And so that was really a driving motivator for us to make this move. And so now we're in her Nana's house, 4 of us. 2 kids, 3 and 1, thinking what's next. So we just started to look for ministry opportunity because we felt that this was more than just a location change for us, that there was something that we wanted to contribute. What was God doing, and what's our part in it? And so it just began to look for places to serve. And the short story is there was a church that was looking for a youth pastor, and I thought, oh man, youth ministry. I mean, I'm 35 at the time, so in ministry years, I'm an old guy. I'm in a different cultural setting, so there's a lot to work through with all of that. And so I went for this interview, and afterwards, my heart was really connected with the people, and we hit it off really, really well. And I thought, God, if you want me to enter youth ministry, I guess that's what I'm going to do. And long story short, when I joined the team here at the church, the associate pastor was only had a month remaining because he had already turned in his notice. And so I thought, oh, that's interesting. But I just was content to kind of sit back and figure out youth ministry in New Zealand again. And before long, the senior pastor came to me and said, hey, we actually think that you would be, we're glad with what you're doing with the youth, but we think that there might be a little bit more for you to kind of broaden ministry into associate pastor. And so I agreed, made that transition, and probably about a year later, there was an unexpected resignation from the senior pastor. And so I just kind of sat back observing all this. Now I'm the only guy that's left here officially on
Wow.
staff at this church. And the leadership came to me, the eldership said, hey, we think that you're the person that God's stirring our hearts for you to kind of take us on into the future. And so just after prayer, speaking with Dee, said, hey, let's do it. And that would have been 2017. And so that's kind of the process again of how things have really just kind of transpired and really snowballed, not just to get to New Zealand, but actually getting to the place where I'm at now. So yeah, it's been a ride. It hasn't always been easy, but it's been really cool to see all the steps come into play. Yeah.
Sure. So a couple of things I want to draw back to just real quick in that little segment where you're updating us on how that went for you. Ultimately, so you take a step, and you explained it really well about not knowing, like you're taking step 1 and 2, not knowing what 6 and 7 is going to be. It's just, I'm going to do what's in front of me. I don't have all this planned out. There's not a lot of a lot of things on paper, like scripted, like I'm going to try this job and I'm going to try this job and I'm going to go after this. And then this is going to open up. And then that's kind of, laid out this massive plan by God in your head. And I think the most effective people never have that. The most effective people are people who God says, take this step. They take that step. And there's a certain level of faith and courage that has to go along with that. So you mentioned that you had a conversation. Well, obviously you prayed. So you're first talking to God, and then you talked to your wife. So talk about that just for a second about I know you and Dee personally, but the people who are watching don't. And so I know how it kind of meshes together. But talk to me about that conversation, how it goes as the priest, protector, and provider of your home to say, hey, I'm going to wear the priest hat here, and I don't have anything, I'm not going to be able to, I can protect us physically, but I can't protect us from the unknown. And I can't prepare for anything. I don't have a way to provide just yet. All of my faith is in God. So I'm wearing this priest hat. And I think we should go. If she tells you no, or she's like, I don't know about this, do you still go? Or talk a little bit about that tension, because I think there's a lot of guys out there who say, I don't have the whole thing planned out either. I just want to take this step. And talk a little bit about that, and maybe help them as they're maybe at that step or deciding to make it.
Yeah, the relationship that Dee and I have it's something that I really value and treasure, and who she is as a person. So there's a lot of trust that she has in me, and there's also that trust is reciprocated in her as well. So we're living in this kind of environment, and and it's more than just the struggle, right? We're seeing some we're taking a financial hit because I want her to stay home with the kids, 3 and 1. And so when we moved to Arizona, I'm just looking for any job that I can get, and the job isn't paying that well. So there's some financial pressure that's there, but she's not the person who's pushing me to go, hey, look at all these financial pressures that we're having. So I am already wearing what I feel the weight is as a provider and as a man. And when you feel that that's a struggle because you're just trying to get any job that you can to get any kind of income in, that's really tough, because as a male, as a man, as a husband, as a father, you want to be a provider. But Dee was very realistic. She understood the situation that we were in, and there was no added pressure on her end for a certain level of lifestyle. So that was huge for us, because for a while there, we're just trying to make it just to get food on the table and to have a place over, shelter, place to live, and buying diapers and formula and all, of course, all that. So when we're already living in this environment, and what's happening is that we're working together and we're discerning, we're feeling the same things, we're recognizing the same things. We have open communication. So we're saying, hey, look at how life is much different here in Arizona this time around. Why are we feeling that maybe relationally there are some things that are drying up for us? And we didn't realize it at the time, but I really believe God was preparing our hearts for this big move. But in the midst of it, man, we are just struggling, not relationally with one another, but just financially and in all these other kinds of areas. And so when you start to have it, when you already have that openness and you're communicating, you start to say, hey, there was something that we revisited many years ago. How are you feeling about maybe revisiting that? And so that in a relationship, in Dee's and I relationship, we really have, it helps to have that confirmation and that person to kind of go back and forth. So I don't have to feel the weight of, well, I'm the competent husband, father, leader who does anything without consultation because I'm the one that's supposed to have the answers all the time. She's that person that comes in and we actually work in this team framework. But at the end of the day, she looks at me and says, I trust you. So now that we've kind of taken all this information and we're deciphering, we're discerning, there's a level of trust that she has in me to go, hey, what do you think? Let's pull the trigger, let's go. And so it was really a difficult process, man. A lot of tears, a lot of pain, but not realizing that all of that is necessary for us to be able to make that big move. So our hearts, in a way, were being detached from a place we had called home. Me, I'd called home all my life. Dee, who had called home nearly half her life, and to be able to make this move. And so when we get there, there's not an unrealistic expectation. And plus, there's now this history of where we've seen God work in these little steps. And so there's almost this trust now that that's going to continue, because that provision and that process, it just doesn't stop here when we arrive. We trust that it's going to continue. So a lot of that consultation and a lot of that work in the relationship, so that on the day-to-day level, when these big decisions happen, you already have that groundwork and that foundation laid for how you're going to parse through information and feelings and discernment, and how you're going to make some pretty big decisions.
Gotcha. There's a couple of things I want to just highlight real quick for any guys who are watching. There's this misnomer that when you look at these people who are successful, it's whoever you're looking at, right? Like, it doesn't matter if it's a pastor or a leader or somebody online that you look up to, or an author or something. There's this thing of going, oh, they decided to write a book one day and the book jumped off and now they're an author. And yep. I don't, the more I get into this and to dig into people's stories, that never happens. And so I think to hear the story of someone who's like, man, I had to make this decision, not on my own. I did feel the responsibility of it, but it came through pain. It came through tears. Yeah. It came through the almost agony. I can hear it in your voice again. And I'm thinking back to the conversations we had, before you moved, and I could, hear it in you then. And there is a there should be some comfort in you if you are struggling, if you are in pain, if you are wrestling with a decision, if there's some agony in you about, I need to make this next step, how is this going to work? That is completely normal, and I would say good. If you were just on a whim, like, oh, it's time to go, I would, that would worry me. The struggle of what do I do, and what are the ramifications if this doesn't work out on my kids, on my wife, on my future, on my family, is a real thing. And so I don't want to I don't want to miss the opportunity to kind of encourage somebody that would say, dude, this is I'm going through a struggle. Well, that struggle is normal. That struggle is, it means you care. It means that there's something on the line, and that validates the step of faith almost even more, because later on you go, man, I see how God used that. I think I heard you say that about, I didn't know it at the time, but God was using that frustration, that angst, that pain as a way to kind of unsettle me, to change my mind, to think about leaving, because it hadn't. And he kind of used that to frame something going in the future.
Yeah, and we, you know, when we kind of sit in our bubble, you know, this is me before I moved to New Zealand. I hear about someone that an American that's moving overseas, and I think, wow, they must have this great opportunity. This must be so easy for them. They must have stacks of cash in their bank account. This is an international move. And so then when we begin contemplating an international move, dude, there is no way we should have moved internationally from a financial perspective. No way. And I'll just tell you, I had, when I turned in my notice, when I sold all my stuff, we had $3,000, $3,000. And I was going to move a family of 4 to the other side of the world. So from a financial perspective, this should have never, ever happened. People would look and go, you're insane. But there's this part of us that when we feel that we need to do something, we can either step back in fear, or we can go, it doesn't matter, we're going to do it. And as humans, we have this need for self-preservation, right? It's built into who we are. It's built into our, you know, our physiology, that if I touch a hot stove, I immediately pull my hand back, because instinctively I know, hey, this is pain, and pain is a communicator. And so when we think of this idea of self-preservation, well, moving into the unknown can be very hurtful. It can be very challenging, and it can be very fearful. So naturally, if I'm going to step into an unknown, and that is a place of fear, well, naturally I'm going to be resistant to that. And so it's, in our case, the pain, in the sense that we were feeling in this angst and this restlessness, we were almost at the point of going, we have to do something. We feel that we're going to do something, and almost that the restlessness and knowing that we needed to do something was an override for that mechanism of self-preservation. And at the end of the day, if we were to move to New Zealand again, and it didn't work, it didn't mean life was over. It meant that we would need to regroup, and we would need to figure things out. So I feel like in my life, made heaps of mistakes, and so it's not as if there are all these decisions that I have had a history. I've been impatient. I've been poor at discernment. I've had lack of mentorship in my life. So there wasn't guidance and wisdom to be able to help me walk through some of these life decisions. And so if we had discerned wrong and moved to New Zealand, it's not the end of the world. But at least I would have stepped out, made that decision. And fortunately for us, we did discern the right thing. And the signs that were accompanying that helped confirm that. But initially, it's tough. And for people who are dealing in that level of comfort, some of that restlessness is a way that God communicates to us based on who we are and what we need to be motivated and to be able to be pushed into a certain direction. And so you have to get to that place, and sometimes you get to that place where you have to override that self-preservation. You have to know that it's there, and really go beyond that. And that's what happened with us.
Me and you have talked about this quite a bit, how
Mm.
the American church has kind of Americanized parts of the gospel and the church and following God, and it's easy to kind of see that from our perspective of all how we were raised in the churches we've gone through, or attended, in the ministry situations we've gone through, and the ones that we'd like to forget, and all of those things, right? Like,
Yeah.
but um uh those those things God uses, those painful scenario God uses. And
Yeah.
even at the church, I'm kind of trying to communicate to our crew here that, hey, it's this idea of pursuit of comfort and materialism have almost become gods here in the
Mm.
States. And it may be that like that everywhere else, but I'm speaking just for where we are. And if there's anything that disrupts my comfort, we just go, oh, it's got to be the devil. Get behind me, Satan. The
Right.
devil is a liar, right? And it disrupts my comfort. But if you're someone who is a man of faith, a Christian person who's pursuing the one true God, has a faith in Jesus that's led to salvation, then God's using all these things. He's using all of these things to communicate at some level, to get your attention in the way it needs to be captured at that moment. And so I want to dispel this myth that if it's painful, it's bad.
Right.
If it's painful, it hurts. But there's sometimes that God uses that pain to communicate to us. And what I'm hearing you talk about that again, like the how God is using that uncomfort,
Mm.
that unsettled thing in my heart and my soul to kind of make a step and a move on. And I just I want people to grasp that, especially guys who are watching this, or I guess it's anybody, but we're talking to men, right? So
Yeah.
I want them guys to grab it, that, hey, this um the situation in your life might be painful, but God you can use that pain to get into your attention. And it seems like the more that I listen to you talking, the where we're going, it kind of seems like that's almost like a theme, almost a thing that
Yeah.
we keep coming back here, is that God can use that pain to point us in a direction that he wants to go. He may not be the author of the pain.
Right.
He may be the one who allowed it, but it put us in some type of scenario that would cause us to take a step, maybe even a wince. I never moved this direction to get away from pain before, but I did. And now when I did, God's like, hey, I got your attention now. Let's move this direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And see, God's good, man, because I try to take a brief recount over my life, and much of the pain that I experienced was self-inflicted, right?
Mm.
Um, I didn't, like I said before, I wasn't in a space where I had a lot of mentorship and people to walk me through some of the challenges of life, or moving into adulthood, or becoming a young man, becoming a young, a husband, and that transition that takes place there. And so you feel like you're moving around aimlessly, and you're kind of left to yourself, and you're making these decisions if you had a little bit of experience or guidance, that maybe you wouldn't make those decisions. Um, so it's powerful to see that God will use even self-inflicted pain to help mold and shape who we are. And again, we have this resistance, and we have certain levels of comfort, that what you're saying is right, that if it's not comfortable, then it's not God, when actually it's completely the opposite. And God has this ability to use all of these things for his good, and to be able to move you, and not just move you in a direction, not just geographical space, not just vocational space, not just relational space, but to be able to mold you and shape you in the process. Like, it's that all encompassing for him. So it's not necessarily about the destination and the places that we will go. It's about who is God forming us to be, while he's actually working things out for his good, for our good, and his purposes. Yeah.
Yeah, I go back to the book of Exodus when Moses is leading the people out of Egypt,
Mm.
and the scripture says that the cloud that they were following, the cloud by day and the pillar of fire at night, the entire nation, you got, multiple millions of people walking through the desert, but that the Spirit of God caused them to walk in a way that made the Egyptians go, they have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
They have no idea where they're going. They have no idea what the direction is. They have no idea. They must be, dehydrated, or the heat's getting to them or whatever. They don't know which way they're going. If they're trying to get to, this place, they're going to a different place. And he used that appearance of ignorance as a way to provoke the enemy to attack them. Yeah. So he provoked a stressful, potentially painful scenario. He provoked that so he could wipe away his enemy, do a miracle that would literally last the span of time, recorded time that everybody, even today, thousands of years, is still referring to, and then provide something for his people so they know that he's real. And so again, you're kind of going through a modern scenario of a timeless characteristic of God, that he may put you in that painful scenario to draw something out of you, to draw an opportunity to you, to, even if you're like, man, I don't know how many times I've said this when I've made a step not to move across the world, but my own step of faith where, like, man, this feels a little stupid here, but I know that who I'm following is good. And I think that if you can get to the default position and understanding that God is good, even if he puts you in a situation where you look dumb, or even if he puts you in a situation where it looks like you're wandering and you don't know what you're doing, and the people around you are going, they're ignorant. If you can do that and default to the position that God is good and I'm stepping out here to follow him, but if this doesn't work, there's enough grace and redemption and creativity and power on his end to get me to where I need to be.
Yeah. And part of that process too is an Exodus event. The people are discovering who God is, right? So imagine that these guys have been in captivity for, X amount of years. We know it's at least 80, 100 years given the Moses timeline. And now all of a sudden they're beginning to see God work. And it's this God that maybe they've heard the stories of. Here's the stories of creation. Here's the story of the forefathers. And now God is unleashing plagues and he's leading them, and they're becoming familiar with this God in the process. And part of that, you start to wonder, can this God really be trusted? Or look, Egypt is devastated and now we're on our pathway to freedom. And I imagine that they would have perceived life to be much different. They could have never, they probably didn't imagine that here's this army. They're going to feel, the thundering of the ground as the horses and chariots are making their way towards them. And you go, I thought this was time for deliverance. And just when you thought that God had maxed out his capacity for what he can do, all of a sudden he's going to split the waters. You're going to walk on dry land, and he is going to decimate the leaders and the armies of Egypt. And God is revealing himself to them in this process. And that's what we find within the wilderness as well. So God will allow that pain to exist, or allow those difficult situations to exist. And in the process, he is going to reveal himself at a greater capacity and more to us. And we see that within the Exodus story. And so, and you can see how they break out into elaborate song, like the Song of Miriam, when the waters crash and the Egyptian army, and they just bust out into this song of rejoicing and praise, because God had delivered them again from that moment of stress. But it was needed, because he was going to make his name great, but he was also going to reveal himself in a deeper way to the people that he essentially loved. Yeah.
Right. As men, I think most of us would like to have, like you talked about before, everything laid out.
Yeah.
But those moments of indecision, first of all, need to be communicated. They like in a moment where it worked out, and to hear stories like yours, that, hey, I made a step, God kind of dropped this in my heart, I kind of recognized he was kind of communicating through these closed doors, we made this step, he provided for me, open up a door for me to provide for my family, I'm participating in his plan, and now my faith is bigger as I take the next step that he's going to walk me into, which is, hey, I'm a youth pastor. And then a few months later, I'm an associate pastor. And then, oh my gosh, and now I'm about to be the senior pastor. And those moments are supposed to build your faith in a way that when the next step comes, that you will go, he did that for me before. I'm going to step and follow him again, and then watch what he does. So there's not going to be a uniform experience for all guys, right? But a lot of these principles are going to be the same. You mentioned that you didn't have a lot of mentors to walk you through the process. We've talked about this before. I feel the same way. We kind of were like, we're just gonna come out here and see what happens, and made some, obviously some mistakes and along the way, and God helped us, through his grace on those things. What would you, I know it worked out for you because you're following God. Ultimately, he's the one that is guiding all this. But what would you say you wish you would have had in that moment? Would it be someone who's already walked through it? It didn't matter if they walked through it, just a friend? Is it, what would have kind of reinforced that move or that faith step in your own life?
Yeah, I think we all have these blind spots. And I think a key that men need to have is to realize that these blind spots exist. And if you know that they exist, but how will you see them if they're blind spots? So that's where someone who is a little bit more seasoned and older in life can really help. So it would have been fantastic if I had someone who was a little bit older than me, that I had a trusted relationship, who could help me sift through all the things that I was experiencing, because I felt like God was speaking to me in a different way. And there wasn't that assurance that I had. So if I would have had someone to be able to say, hey, these things that you were experiencing, let me maybe shed some light on and give you some fresh perspective. And hey, God may be speaking to you in this way. But also, Mark, I know you. I know that you have a mind that doesn't shut off. So you're going to have to figure out, and let me speak to your blind spot for a moment. As we talk, what I'm hearing you say is X, Y, and Z. Mark, that sounds like that's probably your overthinking that's kicking in. Why don't we separate that, and let's talk about, let's highlight some of these other things, because in my experience, this is what I've seen. And a lot of times, what's frustrating, especially for men, is that you want to know, you want to have an outline process, and sometimes you don't get the plan yourself. And so that's why it's important that you have these people in your life who are not only seasoned in life, but also can have a relationship with you where they can call out your blind spots, and they can see your bias, or they can see some of the way that you're wired. And when you are making big decisions, they can say, hey, this is what I see, maybe some of your blind spots coming into play. Right now with the association of churches that I'm connected with, in order to maintain registration with them and have connection with them, they require each pastor to have a supervisor. So the supervisor is someone who is detached from your congregation, detached. They don't know anyone that's really in your circle, and you go and you just unload on them. You talk through different things, and they come with a different angle and a different insight to help you in this, not necessarily a mentorship role, but to be able to ask questions and speak to you in different ways. And that's really been a significant change for me in the process of what I'm dealing with now and the role that I have and just the stage of life. But it is super, super important to be able to have those relationships as men, and have them be trusted relationships where they can actually call you out on certain areas, but also help you and will tell you what you need to hear in those moments you need to hear it.
So notice what he's saying here. There's got to be first and foremost a level of self-awareness.
Yeah.
I have blind spots. That's the first thing you got to admit. You don't know what you don't know, to use an old adage, right? You don't know what you don't know.
And guys don't want to admit that, because one of the things we found about we know about men is that they want to appear competent at all times.
Sure.
So if I say I have blind spots, or maybe I'm a little bit unsure about what to do, that almost reveals incompetency in the sight of men, which is not the right approach to take at all. Because there would be, if you would look at maybe some of the successful leaders or people who are running companies or people who are running churches, they have this knack for surrounding themselves with other voices, strong voices that can speak into areas maybe of weakness. And they don't have any issue admitting incompetence in certain areas. And so that's really a key characteristic that men really need to sort through, to always have this need to have all the information and to appear competent before whoever, and because that will definitely restrict someone from saying, oh, let me openly admit I have blind spots and weaknesses, that let me openly admit that I don't always know what to do, and it will keep them isolated, and they will just live with that, whereas they could actually build some trusted relationships and help them move forward in the areas they want to move forward in.
Yeah, I think I've heard John Acuff, the author. I'm not sure if you know him, but he says self-awareness is a superpower, because if you're not going to admit that you don't know what you don't know, and you're going to try to keep that facade of I'm competent when you're incompetent, but you're just too prideful to admit it, then you're going to fail miserably. You don't just need a golfing buddy. That's not what he's talking about.
Yeah.
You don't just need a guy who's going to go and shoot pool with you, or whatever, your pickleball if you're over 40, right? Like if you're like if you don't need that guy. You do need those people, but he's not talking about that. The relationship is a trusted, known relationship that has the rights, and the way they have the rights to speak to you in this way is that you gave it to them. That you are saying, I don't know. There's not a lot of retaliation. There's not a lot of pushback of, hey man, you have this blind spot. Dude, shut up. No, I don't. And what are you talking about? If you jump stupid like that, it's almost a dead giveaway that it is a blind spot for you, and that you probably have a hint and or at least an outside understanding that it is an area you need to work on. So it becomes it becomes something that you think you're keeping that competency, but you're really looking like a child. So the trusted relationships are trusted because you have given them permission to say something to you. You've given them the permission to look at you without the retribution, without the, jumping stupid on them, to look at you and go, hey man, this would be something you need to consider.
And here's the truth, is that people already more than likely know your blind spots.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Yep. Like they visibly see it through your actions and all that kind of stuff like that. So if people already know those blind spots, just own up to it, man. Those blind spots exist, and then build those trusted relationships so that people can help you work through those things, because a lot of people are already going to know. You're worried about being exposed. You've already been exposed, my friend. and I know that has happened. That's been true for me as well. And it's something that's already there. And you're right. You got to have that self-awareness to go, okay, yeah, it's there.
If you have no self-awareness and you're like, well, I don't have any blind spots, bro, you're not as good as you think you are. No. Let me just lay that right out here for you and repeat that statement again. You're not as good as you think you are. And none of us are. That's not, that is someone that's two people who have walked in moments where we wish we had someone who learned. There's two ways to learn, right? Wisdom and experience. So we had to learn the experience route because there wasn't a lot of wisdom dealing, from other people to us during those moments. And we had to learn that way. And what we're saying to you is, hey, you need to make sure you've got some trusted relationships.
Yeah.
And here's the harsh reality. In my own life, I thought I had those. And then when we hit a certain conversation or an impasse, all of them evaporated. And had I listened to those people on this, as I was trying to follow God into this period of refinement and changing all this stuff about me, I would have probably not gone in the direction I needed to go. So there may be some of you who are going, man, I need this and I think I got this. And as you go to lean on them, it kind of dissolves a little bit. Maybe God's removing that person to bring in the correct voice for you. Again, we're defaulting to the position that God is good and that he's not trying to torment you or cause you pain or hurt you. We're defaulting to the position that he made you a man, and he knows how you're wired. Isolation is one of the killers, the key killers for guys. And, we won't get into, we'll probably wrap this up here quick, but in our next conversation and our next series of conversations, we're going to talk about how that isolation plagued our own father, because it absolutely did. Absolutely did. And some of that, he was a guy who would tell you just enough about himself to appease his conscience, but never tell you the full story. And you cannot, if you're a man watching this, you can't tip if you got a full hand of cards, you can't tip 2 of them and then keep the rest to the vest. If you're going to give an account and have that type of relationship, you're going to lay all the cards on the table, good, bad, and ugly. And you're going to have to give an account and say, hey, this is what I'm holding. This is where I am. And if no one can read those things, and you're isolating because I got to keep that front, you are playing right into the hand of failure.
Yeah. And I mean, isolation is a whole topic on its own, and it's something that I know very, very well. Because when you're working through some of these difficult things and you're trying to figure stuff out, and you just get into the spiral, into this rut, and you go live on an island and you push everybody out because everything is painful. You're tormented by your own thoughts, and the thought of opening yourself up to someone else is almost incomprehensible, but it's absolutely needed. And I don't want to jump into the isolation stuff now.
You're giving away the good stuff for the next time. Don't do that early.
You gotta have those people that look and say, man, I love you. I love you on all levels, that whatever you bear to me, it's not going to impact the way that I feel about you. And I've had people say that to me before, to say, hey, you could tell me 1, 2, and 3, and these were horrible things that were not true about myself. And they said, I would still love you, even if you were to say that these are the things that you're dealing with. And so it does take time. You're not gonna dial someone up and go, hey man, I know that we've been friends for a while. We've shot pool together. We've played darts. We watched the game together. Let me go ahead and just dump all of what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, and let me give you a shout of who I really am. It's going to take some time to build that relationship, but that's, again, you have to start taking those steps into discomfort, because as men, we go, that's a little bit uncomfortable, but you have to start laying the groundwork for some of those foundations, because it's only going to prove to be beneficial to you in the long run.
So if you're a younger man watching this, or you're someone who's not in a period of transition or whatever, and you're going, well, I mean, I'm kind of good right now. No, you're not. You got in a window of opportunity here to start building that relationship that can help you, because that time for you, it's coming, my friend. It is coming.
And this is the thing. This is what we do, right? We wait till we're massively in debt before we learn about finances and wealth.
Right.
We wait till we're 100 pounds overweight and really battling some health issues that are health related. That's when we decide, oh, I'm going to learn about health. And so it's a lot of what we do is reactionary, and there's not a lot of preparation, especially in those early years for myself. There's a part of me that I can't see beyond 6 months, 8 months, a year. And this gets into the mentorship and having some older people around you to guide you. But laying the groundwork for what you will experience is something that we have to give thought to, especially as men, instead of being reactive to the situations that we will experience. What are some healthy processes we can actually lay out in now, this very day or this week or this month, that will actually help us in the future when we face some of these challenges that are undoubtedly what we will face as people, as men,
Yeah, that time's coming for everybody, and prepare now. Prepare now relationally, prepare now. I heard John Maxwell had a heart attack in his mid-50s. I think he's like 55 or 56. And he said, I wish I would have not waited until I had a health problem to start working on my health. And there's a lot of guys who do that, right? There's a lot of guys who wait until the crisis, and then they're like, oh, I'm off the rails. How do I get this back on the rails? The easiest way to get it back on the rails is not to let it derail in the first place. Is to put some safeguards in place now. Take the wisdom of the people who bear the scars physically, emotionally, and mentally, that have had to live through some of this stuff without the people around them that they wish they would have had, which is both of us. But take the advice now. Don't learn through the experience, learn through the wisdom, and apply it now. And then make sure that the people that you've got around you are the ones who are going to help you as you navigate forward. This will be sometimes when God purges those people around you, it is going to be painful. But again, he's good. He sees what you don't. He knows every one of your blind spots, even the ones you can't see or the ones you know about and won't admit. And if he's orchestrating it and you're following him, ultimately it's going to work out for your benefit. So if he's got to purge some people, it will suck, but it's going to be good.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be good. All right, we're going to call it right there. Feels like a good spot to end it.
Sounds good, man.
And then we will pick this up again on our next time. We'll hit isolation. We'll eventually wander into a conversation about dad, which will be a big one. And but it'll be I think super helpful for a lot of people. So thanks for working me in tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the future.
And I love you a ton. Please give my best to the girls and to Dee, and we'll do this again soon. Hope you guys got something out of it, and it's super beneficial. Hey, like and subscribe to the channel. I keep forgetting to say that. Like and subscribe to if you like the video, like it, share it with somebody, and do all of that. And we will catch you at the next one. See you guys.
Thanks, man. See you guys.